Welcome, everyone, to the Buddhist Recovery Network Academy. Today is April 5th. We have joining us Walt Opie, who is our board president, and I am Beth Herzig, joining from Madison, Mississippi. We're glad that you're here to join us. We'll be together today for an hour. The first portion of the hour will be a meditation, and then we will have a presentation, Transforming the Heart by Walt Opie, our board president. And then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. So the Q&A is open to anyone. You can type your message in a chat or even raise your virtual hand. And I will just let you know, we wanted to let you know that we are having a summit in Oakland, California. That will be announced. More registration and details of that will be happening soon on our website. So if you're not signed up for our newsletter, please sign up on our website, BuddhistRecovery.org, so that you can find out more about that. It'll be happening in Oakland, California, October 2nd through the 4th. And we're working on all of the programming that will be included in that, as well as offering you places to stay and letting you know everything that will be happening at that time. So we do this every other year in person and then every other year online. So this is an in-person year. So it'll be another opportunity for us to all gather in person in Oakland, California. So, let me start by letting you know that we do offer this meeting freely. Anyone that can come is offered this opportunity to gather freely, but we do also ask for dana if you are able to give. We're blessed with a lot of amazing teachers, and this is an ongoing practice of recovery. And by way of practicing the Dharma together, we practice the Buddha's teaching of generosity. So we invite you to give dana if you're able, and that dana will be given to support the Buddhist Recovery Network and to continue the work that we do, offering meetings, telling you about different recovery retreats and also these teachings, as well as our summit coming up. And it also goes to support our teacher. So you can give on a one-time or recurring basis, and we'll post the link in the chat shortly. But we just sincerely appreciate you being here by way of, on Zoom, we are practicing together and we can give generously via that dana link. And I'll share that soon. But let's hear a little bit more about Walt. Walt Opie is a Buddhist teacher in the Insight meditation tradition, and he was trained to teach through the Spirit Rock and Dharma Leaders program. He was mentored by Kevin Griffin. And more recently, he is part of the 2017 to 2021 Insight Meditation Society's IMS Retreat Teacher Program. Walt has also led sitting groups specifically for people in addiction recovery since 2011, and he's also served as a volunteer facilitator in the California prison system for many years. His journey to recovery began at age 21, and he lives in Berkeley, California with his wife and their young daughter. And I'll post his website in the chat as well. The teaching is called Transforming the Heart. And both Buddhist practice and recovery from addiction point to an inner transformation of the heart. As practicing addicts, our hearts may have been pretty shut down, which maybe we don't even realize that until it starts to open when we practice in recovery, perhaps even slowly at first. One of the wonderful things about Buddhist practice is that we learn that we can train the heart through certain practices like loving kindness or metta. And then we realize that we're not practicing Buddhist recovery for ourselves, and we're not practicing alone, but this is also learning we can benefit others. In fact, the Buddha encouraged us to be a refuge for all beings. And so I would like to invite Walt onto the screen, and thank you for being here. And we would love to turn it over to you to offer your guidance. Thanks for being here, Walt.
Great. Thanks, Beth, for that introduction, and thanks for all that you do for Buddhist Recovery Network. Beth does a lot behind the scenes. So we've had a lot of words thus far. Why don't we jump into some meditation to start our time together, but thank you for joining us for this. I'll give some guidance and there'll be some silence as well, and we'll meditate for maybe 15 minutes, something like that. So I invite you to find a comfortable meditation posture and take a moment to really settle in. It's good if you're sitting to have your back fairly straight and upright. And you might take a deep breath here at the beginning as a way to more fully arrive here in this body, in this present moment. Just notice there is this body sitting here. It's an invitation to kind of drop down out of the discursive thoughts into a felt sense of being grounded in this body. Feel the contact with the chair, cushion, feel the hands, feel the feet. You might be aware of sounds in the room, outside the room, aware of sensations in the body. You might release any tension that you notice in the body as you begin the meditation, softening the face, softening around the eyes, dropping the shoulders if they're up a little, relaxing the arms and the upper torso, relaxing the legs, even the feet, hands. And you can meditate with your eyes open or closed. It's up to you. Sometimes it's helpful to start with eyes closed. If you start getting sleepy, you can open them a little to let in some light. I like to use the breath as an anchor for my meditation. So as I breathe in, I just know that I'm breathing in. As I breathe out, I know that I'm breathing out. And just gently resting our attention on the breath, not trying to control the breath in any way. And we want to practice with a sense of kindness for ourselves, for everyone we come into contact with. So cultivating that attitude of kindness, curiosity, care. If the mind feels really busy, that's totally normal. You're not doing anything wrong. That's just the way the mind can be. We trust that the process of meditating following the breath, being present with the body. This will often create the conditions for the mind to settle down over time. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. It can be nice to send ourselves some loving kindness phrases if you have that as part of your practice, or if you want to try it. Um, we can just think thoughts like, may I be happy and peaceful. May I be healthy and strong. May I be safe and protected from harm. May I have the ease of well-being. You can make it simpler. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from harm. And then you could also send it out to others. You could choose specific people that you're close to that you want to send well wishes to, or just send it to everybody on this Zoom call. May everybody here be happy and peaceful. May everybody here be healthy and strong. May everybody here be safe and protected from harm. May everybody here have the ease of well-being. And you might finish up with the metta or keep going. It's up to you. Um, but also just a reminder to check in, notice if you're getting lost in thought. Might be a story, a plan, judgment, memory. See if you can gently let that go just for now. Come back to the next breath. Reconnect with the felt sense of this body sitting here. If the mind is still pretty busy, another practice I like to try sometimes is gratitude practice. So we just think of 2 or 3 things that we're sincerely grateful for in this moment. I'm grateful to be clean and sober today. I'm grateful to Beth for doing all the work behind the scenes to make this gathering on Zoom happen. I'm grateful to my Buddhist teachers for all of their teachings. And lastly, as we come near the end of the meditation, see if you can really stay present with one in breath, one out breath. And see if you notice what one of my teachers calls the subtle joy of being in the present moment. The subtle joy of being in the present moment. Something to invite in, can't force it. Okay, that concludes the meditation. So feel free to stretch, do whatever you need to do to come back to the room, or you could keep meditating as well. You might want to keep your awareness. One of my teachers used to say 80% with the body and then 20% listening to the talk, something like that. Whatever works for you. 100% listening to the talk is good as far as I'm concerned. Um, so I'm aware that time kind of can go fast in these things, so I'll try to jump right into it here. Um, the topic that I came up with, it really came from going to a 12-step meeting, I have to admit, and we read something from this book, Came to Believe, which is the least, in some ways, not a very Buddhist book. It's not a Buddhist book at all. But there was just this story that caught my attention that we read called An Open Heart. And the author, who is anonymous from New York, wrote, it seemed it seemed that I could see a wall crumbling before me, a wall that had separated me from other people. I had never known it existed until I saw it crumbling. Even though I had been considered friendly and gregarious, now I saw that I had never had a close relationship with anyone. Prior to this gift of insight, I had not known that my heart was closed, the author says. Now I knew because it was opened. I could now ask and receive help, and I hope that someday I would be able to have something to give back. Um, they even say I felt free and light and good. I would no longer block out love if I kept my heart open. And this just kind of really struck me at the time that I heard it. And then they conclude their little piece by saying, I had nothing to do with this gift coming to me, so my gratitude is beyond description. And then they ended with, may I keep an open heart. The joy which can come to an open heart is unlimited. And I love that because that could be a Buddhist person could have written that, right? So I was like, this is my kind of 12-step literature. Anyway, but the story really inspired me to reflect on my own journey, which started in 1987, which is starting to seem like a long time. And but again, and there've just been so many gifts along the way, and I can't all. I've just great somehow managed to stay sober one day at a time, kind of thing, clean and sober from alcohol and weed, basically. And I went to rehab in 1987 at the age of 21, and my counselor said, you know, you seem willing to admit that you have a problem with alcohol, but you don't seem to want to admit that you have a problem with marijuana or whatever. And so they made me really look at that, and I realized, oh yeah, I was very obsessed with weed and smoked a lot of it at different times. So those were my two main drugs of choice. I, of course, did a lot of other stuff too, but anyway, so there was a story that happened. This story that I just read reminded me of something that happened to me at the rehab that I went to, and this was, obviously really at the beginning of my recovery journey or whatever. But we had a family visitation day at the treatment center. So both of my parents were still in the picture. They came to this day, and the counselor was talking about suicide, or somehow they were referencing, did you ever consider taking your own life during your ups and downs with your addictions? And what I said at the time was, I never really, I never tried to kill myself, but if a truck had run over me in the middle of the street, I really wouldn't have cared. That's how I put it. Something like that. And I said it very nonchalantly, as we do when we're like in our 20s or whatever. And uh, but then I happened to look over at my father, I don't think I'd ever even seen him cry before, and he had tears coming down his cheeks. And it really got my attention. I was like, wait a minute, maybe this isn't all some kind of joke, like maybe I need to take, like, he actually cares what happens to me. He would care if a truck ran over me. I shouldn't say these things so flippantly, right? And it just something about he didn't say much, but just the tears really got my attention at the time. And it really kind of it got me in the heart a little bit, Not I'm not saying it changed everything but it definitely affected me. And I started to think, well, maybe I should care a little more about my life. You know, and it was interesting. The counselor, we didn't talk, I don't remember what else happened in that session, but right before I left treatment, the counselor said, well, Walt, I think you like yourself okay, but I don't think you love yourself. And that could lead you back to your drugs of choice and that kind of thing. And then that was kind of I left treatment, right? And that became kind of a koan for me in my recovery because I was like, well, so I like myself, but I don't love myself. What does that mean? And it really wasn't until many years later on a Buddhist, insight meditation retreat that I felt like I really came to that place of loving myself. Well, it was a process, obviously, but there was a point on a 2-month retreat at Spirit Rock Meditation Center in Marin where I was literally, kind of hiking in the uh, on the hillside, and they have these like rolling, beautiful California hills. And I was kind of hiking around there, and I just suddenly stopped, and I was like, I'm feeling this weird thing." And I thought about it, and it's like I just feel total sense of well-being, peace, and love for myself. And it felt totally weird. It was like not, it felt unusual. But then I thought, wow, this is pretty amazing. To the point when the retreat ended, I texted my buddy in recovery and said, "This shit works." um, because it really was like kind of remarkable that it felt like a long time coming, but that there was a real transformation that had maybe happened over many years of practice and staying in clean and sober and all that stuff. So that was one of the stories that kind of came to me when I heard that story in the meeting. Um, and this story, there's a great Zen story that I always liked. It's pretty short. For some reason, I'm having a hard time finding it. Where did that thing go? Let's see. So it's a Zen story about Ryokan, who was he's one of the most beloved figures in Japan even today. And school children read his poems. One of his most famous poems is "The thief left it behind, the moon at the window." So somebody had robbed his little hut that he lived in and taken everything. And what he noticed was, well, they left the moon in the window. So that's a pretty good place to be if you can do that, right? He wasn't. Um, and he also wrote, "Oh, that my monk's robe were wide enough to gather up all the suffering people in this floating world." So he was also known for great compassion. But so this story says that Ryokan never preached to or reprimanded anyone. Once his brother asked Ryokan to visit his house and speak to his delinquent son. Ryokan came, but did not say a word of admonition to the boy. We don't know what the delinquent son was up to, but as a former delinquent son, I really relate to this. And then the story says, he stayed overnight and prepared to leave the next morning. As the wayward nephew was lacing Ryokan's straw sandals, he felt a warm drop of water. Glancing up, he saw Ryokan looking down at him, his eyes full of tears. Ryokan then returned home, and the nephew changed for the better. That's the story. But I love that Ryokan never says a word. He just right on his way out the door drops a few tears on the kid and leaves. And but it has an impact, right? And my father was not Ryokan, but I will say that his tears had a similar effect at that time. And it's funny, Ryokan, I think this is one of his later poems he wrote. Now and then I hear leaves falling while sitting alone. I have cut off my ties with the world, and yet, why should I shed tears? So you get the feeling he's just he's got a very open heart, even though he's living alone out in the forest most of the time. And this kind of it's funny. I moved to San Francisco from the East Coast in around 1991, and um, I went to a lot of 12-step meetings. There weren't a lot of other options, right? And there was this old timer at the meetings named Cy, and he had been a judge. Somehow everybody knew that he was like a retired judge, and he had way more sobriety than like everybody else, like decades. And so whenever he would speak, it would the room you could hear a pin drop, and so I would try to go to meetings where he would show up. And I started to realize that every time he talks, he just talks about love the whole time. And somehow I kept thinking he's going to bring up some other topic. No, he just always brought it back to love. So I feel a little bit like I'm channeling him trying to talk about this today because it's sort of to me, it feels like a slightly vulnerable topic. But if I'm honest, this has been a big part of my journey, this inner transformation of the heart over many years. And it's a beautiful thing ultimately, but we can have a lot of resistance to this, especially in early recovery. So if this is not landing for you, that's okay too. um, but stick around; it's worth it. Good Joseph Goldstein, one of my teachers, wrote, "So each of us in our own way can plant and water the seeds of right thought and a kind heart. And slowly they will grow and become the guiding principles of our lives. And even at those times when we're not acting from this place of wisdom and compassion, it can still be the reference point that reminds us of other choices." I love that. It can still be the reference point that we come back to. So sometimes I find myself getting, mad at the dog or something, and then realize, oh God, I don't want to hurt this poor dog, like why am I getting so mad at him? Every time we turn on a movie, our dog starts running around like crazy and like making a lot of noise. And we just want to watch a movie. It can be a little frustrating. He's like, no, pay attention to me. But so I just really appreciate Joseph's quote there. And let's see, I do want to keep time for everybody. And I'll say that, we have this. Well, here's one more story for you because I love stories. And so we all have this capacity, to love. I do believe that. And so there's a story from Anam Tupten, a Tibetan teacher. He says one time two people had an assignment to assassinate a politician. They went to his home and waited for him to show up. Usually he came home at 7 o'clock every night, but on this day at 7 o'clock he wasn't there. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, and he still didn't show up. It got to be midnight, and still the politician wasn't home. Finally, the would-be assassins looked at each other, and one of them said, "I'm getting a little worried. I hope he's okay." So, anyway, you know, um, there are these amazing stories, by the way, that are, I don't think that's necessarily a real true story, but there's a true story about Ajahn Chah, who was Jack Cornfield's teacher in Thailand. And he was, you know, a great master. A couple million people came to his funeral procession in Bangkok when he died. Anyway, at some point, a warlord or somebody like that, hired an assassin to go kill Ajahn Chah at his monastery. This really, apparently really happened. And so this assassin, would-be assassin, showed up at the monastery. And I don't know how he was planning to kill him, but he had to get pretty close to Ajahn Chah to carry this out. And as he got closer, Ajahn Chah was giving a Dharma talk and just emanating loving kindness, goodwill, peace, all these beautiful qualities. And the guy thought to himself, wait a minute, I can't kill this guy. This guy's amazing. And he ended up giving up his job as an assassin and actually uh, ordaining as a monk under Ajahn Chah. And the story comes from another monk who knew him as a fellow monk at the monastery, Ajahn Amaro. So that, as far as I know, that's a true story. I think that's pretty amazing. So, and I will say that when I first started my Buddhist practice, I was really interested in, deep concentration practice and all that. And when they started talking about loving kindness practice, I kind of thought that was like the fluffy part you do if you have a little extra time on your hands or something. It didn't seem like the really important stuff to me. But then over time, I just started to notice that maybe there's something to it. And then one day I was practicing it on a retreat, and it didn't feel like it was doing much. But I accidentally hit my hand on the door jamb, like after dropping my dishes off at the dining hall. And the first thing I did was kiss my hand where I'd hurt it, kiss the boo boo or whatever. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not how I used to respond. Usually I would have cussed and whatever else, called myself a fool for not paying attention, whatever. But in that moment, I just kissed the hand. I was like, oh, you hurt yourself. So then I thought, wow, maybe this metta stuff is doing something. And then once I was an assistant teacher on a retreat with Kevin Griffin, who has spoken here at this academy, and he leads, Buddhist recovery retreats. And he asked me to lead the metta practice one afternoon so he could meet with a student or a couple students or something. And so I'm leading the metta, and I hadn't led it a lot at that up until that point. And I looked out at the crowd, and people were really getting into it, and people had their hands on their hearts, people had tears coming down, and I started to think, wow, like this practice has changed the feeling in this room. People are really getting in touch with their hearts. This is a beautiful thing. So I started to really also enjoy leading it. And then I was invited to lead it at a prison where I was doing a prison volunteer work. And I remember the other volunteer said, it's your turn to lead the metta wall. And I tried to get out of it because I was thinking, oh, these guys don't want to do metta practice. But they're like, no, it's gonna be great. So I led the metta, and it was this beautiful session, and it really felt like the whole room melted into love at a prison chapel. And we had this partition between our Buddhist service, as we call them, and there was some other religious service on the other side of this partition, so we could hear each other. And there were times where we would be trying to meditate in silence, and the other group would be singing at the top of their lungs. So we had like religious wars going on in the chapel. But on that particular day, after we finished our metta, um, they pull the partitions back, and everybody's starting from all the groups are getting ready to go out the doors, and it's sort of a production. But that day in particular, a lot of the guys from the other religious group I noticed came up and wanted to talk to me and the other volunteers. And it was like we changed the whole building into a house of metta, and not just our own little group, but somehow it felt like it had honestly affected the other guys too. So that got my attention as well. You had to be there, I think, but that was kind of cool to see. Maybe I'm getting too woo-woo, but that was my experience. All right, so I'll open it up here in a minute. I'd love to hear from some of you all. Let me just see if I had anything else I wanted to just include. I mean, there are the benefits of loving kindness. If you haven't heard this list, one sleeps happily, one wakes happily, one has no bad dreams, one is loved by others, Uh, one is loved by non-humans. One is guarded by devas or spirits. Fire, poison, or sword won't touch one, so it's believed to be a protection. One's mind becomes concentrated quickly. That's the ironic part is that mind loving kindness practice can actually concentrate the mind and help our meditation go deeper, which was news to me. One's complexion becomes clear. One dies with a mind free from confusion. Um, I love that too. So when we're in touch with this peaceful, loving heart, we're less confused. Things become clearer. And in the Dhammapada, it says, a bhikkhu dwelling in loving kindness and pleased with the Buddha's teachings attains happiness, the stilling of formations, the state of peace. So it's connected to, all of that. All right. Well, thank you for your kind attention. I'm going to leave it there just so we can open it up and hear from you. I love any stories you want to share, any questions you have. I'm happy to answer. This is my favorite part of the.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here today. Did you want to do a dedication of merit? Well, I have put lots of messages in the chat, and I'll stay on here a little bit longer if you want to copy any of that. And you can see that we have put our Donna link in there, as well as other ways you can stay connected with Buddhist Recovery Network, link to our YouTube, link to our website, and also ways you can connect by listening to our podcasts and in our Facebook group. So we do have a Facebook group that is the BRN Facebook group that you can do have to answer some questions to be accepted. So please answer those questions. All of those links are in the chat. But we are so glad that you were here, and we will be here again next month with Kevin Griffin. Did you want to say anything about your class that you do with Dalila, and then perhaps offer a dedication of merit? I put the link in the chat a couple times, but the next one is this week, right?
Nick, well, it's the third Tuesday of every
Oh,
month.
the third. Okay, I thought it was the first. Okay.
Yeah, it's the Insight Recovery Sangha, but we try not to call it IRS. I'll joke about that. Anyway, yeah, well, thanks everybody. Since we're at time, I'll just do a very short dedication of merit. May any, I'll just pause here. May any merit that arises from our time here together go for the benefit of all beings everywhere, especially those suffering from addictions of any kind, and may all beings, including ourselves, be happy, peaceful, and free. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Walt. Good to be here together, and we hope that we see everyone back on next month and at our BRN summit, which will be online and in person in Oakland, October 2nd through the 4th of this year. So stay connected with us so we can let you know how to come be with us there. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.